Harper Lane had always found something comforting about altitude. The hush of pressurized air, the quiet hum of jet engines, the endless sky outside a tiny porthole, it all felt suspended from the burdens of the ground. Altitude gave people permission to pause, to stop pretending. Businessmen cried. Honeymooners argued. Celebrities curled up and drooled in designer sweats. At 35,000 feet, people couldn't lie the same way. Except, apparently, billionaires. She hadn't meant to hear it. The cabin was nearly empty. Just two men in the private jet's rear lounge, one of them Leo Dumas, owner of the very aviation company she worked for. She was walking past with a tray of Perrier and smoked almonds when she paused, just for a second, behind the divider curtain. That's when she heard it. No, we offload the Cayman assets before fiscal hits. I'll cover it with a dummy holding in Luxembourg. Then we'll reinvest under the foundation's name clean on paper. Harper's breath caught. She didn't move. She didn't mean to freeze just long enough for the sentence to embed itself like a thorn under her skin. A slight crackle of static followed, and then the low voice of the second man, Julian Crane, if she remembered correctly. Something about risk exposure and media silence. Money talked louder than truth in their world. She stepped forward deliberately, making enough noise to signal her presence. Glasses clinked. The curtain swayed. And Leo looked up. Slate-gray eyes met hers, cool, unreadable, but not surprised. He saw her. He knew. A beat of silence. Then, with maddening calm, he turned to Julian. Give us a moment. Julian raised an eyebrow. She's crew. Leo. Leo didn't look away from her. Exactly. Julian left with the pace of someone used to being dismissed. Harper placed the tray on the side table, spine stiff. I wasn't listening. You were standing in a jet cabin, Leo said. With ears. I assume you listened. The calm in his voice was surgical. No punits. Just precision. He reached into his tailored jacket, pulled out a card, and slid it across the marble tabletop. It gleamed black, glossy, and elite. Amex Centurion. Her eyes narrowed. What is that? A courtesy. No, she said, stepping back. That's a bribe. I call it insurance. I call it an insult. Leo stood slowly. Even in motion, he looked engineered clean lines, crisp shirt, the faintest scent of vetiver and power. Miss Lane, this is not personal. I'm protecting my business. By assuming I'm for sale, he studied her face like it was a painting he couldn't quite authenticate. Everyone has a price. I was trying to be efficient. You don't know me. I'm trying to. Harper blinked. That answer disarmed her more than anything. Not an apology. Not a threat. Just interest. Cold, curious interest, like she was another variable in his equation. Take the card. No. He tilted his head. Then forget this happened. I can't unknow what I heard. And yet, Leo said, you can choose not to misunderstand it. Her cheeks flushed, whether from rage or fear or shame. She wasn't sure. But she turned and left the lounge without another word. 2 days later, she was grounded, fired with no warning, no explanation, and no final paycheck. We're downsizing, the email said. She'd flown 1,200 hours for this airline, taken red-eyes across continents, kept secrets for celebrities, comforted grieving widows, cleaned blood off seats during turbulence, and smiled through it all. And now? Harper stood outside the corporate office in Teterboro, watching the sun glint off the glass building like it had something to hide. Leo's name was etched on the side in chrome letters. Dumas Aviation Group. She knew what this was. Retribution wrapped in a severance envelope. She clutched the manila folder in her hand, her HR file, and turned to leave, but a voice behind her stopped her cold. I was expecting you. She didn't have to look. That voice had already begun to live rent-free in the corridors of her mind. Leo Dumas. He stepped out from the shaded awning like the villain in a noir film suit. Perfect. Expression unreadable. You had me fired. No, he said. I had you reassigned. Semantics. Perspective, he corrected, then added. You're right. I crossed a line. The card was a mistake. Her jaw clenched. I don't want your apologies either. I'm not offering one. He stepped closer. I'm offering a job. Harper blinked. Excuse me? My personal jet. Executive flight manager. You'd be coordinating my in-air operations directly. Triple the salary. Private accommodations. Full discretion. She almost laughed. So, after insulting me, firing me, and violating half a dozen labor rights, you want me to work for you? Work with me. Why? He looked at her for a long time before answering, because you didn't take the card. And for the first time, Harper saw something flicker behind his cool exterior. A fracture. A brise. Something human. She shook her head. You're unbelievable. Some say that, but I don't lie. The offer is real. She turned and walked away. His voice didn't chase her. But the echo of it did. You didn't take the card, and he hadn't stopped watching her since. Harper didn't sleep that night. Not really. She drifted between shallow waves of exhaustion, the kind that lingers beneath your skin and hums with old memories. By morning, the only thing keeping her upright was adrenaline and 4-day-old coffee in a chipped Harlem apartment mug. Leo Dumas had offered her a job. Not a job in orbit. A world she had no business in, tethered to his altitude by proximity, not permission. She paced across her narrow studio, the folder from HR still sitting unopened on the couch like a silent dare. Triple the salary. Private accommodations. Discretion. She wanted to scream. The worst part wasn't the insult. It was the temptation. Outside, traffic murmured with the apathy of a New York morning. Inside, Harper dug through her drawer, pulling out an old photo her and her brother in front of the Bronx Botanical Garden. She looked young, cocky, eyes full of grit. That girl wouldn't hesitate to walk away. That girl hadn't yet learned what debt tasted like. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Subject. Confirming interest. Miss Lane, the offer remains open. Flight leaves Teterboro at 0600. Destination, Dubai. You'll have 12 hours to decide. No strings. No expectations. L. D. She stared at the screen, then threw it across the bed, like that might sever the connection. By noon, she was on the A train to visit someone she hadn't seen in years. The bar was dim and smelled faintly of stale limes and memory. It used to be their neighborhood haunt, the kind of place with dented booths and carved initials in the wood. Jackson was already there, sipping something with too much ice and not enough bourbon. He looked up, smiled crookedly. Well, damn, Harper Lane. She slid into the seat across from him, arms crossed. You still pretending you're not a bartender? He grinned. You still pretending you're not running from something? They hugged, and for a moment, she let herself breathe. Jackson was the only person alive who knew what her sealed record actually contained. He was there when the system called her complicit for defending her brother. He saw her hauled off in cuffs at 17. He knew how many times she'd been told she'd never fly for anyone but herself again. You look tired, he said. I'm fine. Lie again, and I'll spill bourbon on your shoes. She sighed. It's Leo Dumas. Jesus. You're dating the Death Star now? Harper scowled. I worked a charter flight for him. Overheard something I shouldn't have. He tried to pay me off. I refused. I got fired. Now he's offering me a promotion. Jackson blinked. That escalated. He said he was impressed I didn't take the card. Sounds like you passed the world's sketchiest ethics test. Or failed the obedience one. He leaned forward. You think he's dangerous? I think he's used to getting what he wants. And right now, that's me. Jackson didn't flinch. Then ask yourself, what do you want? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because beneath the chaos and cynicism, she wanted something from Leo Dumas. Not the money. Not the travel. But the way he looked at her like she was unknowable. Like he didn't just want to possess her, he wanted to understand her. That was more dangerous than the card. The next morning, Harper didn't go to the airport. She told herself she was done, told herself she wouldn't play this game. Then, around noon, a knock on her apartment door. She opened it to find a courier holding a small, matte black envelope. For Miss Harper Lane, he said. Hand delivery. No tracking. Inside was a boarding pass. No name. Just a departure time. And one small card. Sometimes people make mistakes. I prefer those who don't make them twice. L. D. She exhaled, slow and bitter. It was manipulative. It was calculated. It was working. That night, as Harper closed the curtain to her window, something caught her attention movement in the alley. She leaned out slightly. A man, maybe mid-30s, suit too expensive for the block, talking quietly into an earpiece. He looked up too quickly. She snapped the curtain shut. Heart ticking like a bomb. That wasn't Leo. That was someone else. Her phone rang. She grabbed it, pulse rising. Unknown number again. Harper Lane? The voice was smooth. Male. No accent. Too calm. You might want to be careful about who you trust. Click. No name. No offer. Just a warning. Herr Skienprekel. It wasn't Leo's style. It was someone else's. Someone who didn't want her getting too close to the truth or too close to Leo. Suddenly, his offer didn't feel like a golden ticket. It felt like a trigger. She didn't sleep again. But by 4 a.m., she'd made her decision. And by 5:42 a.m., Harper Lane walked into the private terminal at Teterboro with a borrowed suitcase, a vintage leather flight bag, and a heart that beat with something between fear and fury. The Dumas jet sat on the tarmac like a sleeping beast, white and chrome, quiet against the pre-dawn sky. The door was open. A man in a tailored black coat stood at the top of the stairs, arms folded. Leo Dumas. Their eyes met again. This time, she didn't look away. He didn't smile. Just nodded once. Invitation accepted. Altitude rising. Chapter 2. Grounded, then lifted. The air inside the jet smelled like bergamot, leather, and freshly brewed espresso. It was somehow both intimate and impersonal, like a 5-star hotel designed never to feel like home. Harper stood at the entrance for a breath too long. The cabin lights were dim, the seats upholstered in ivory leather, the aisle impossibly silent except for the low buzz of pre-flight systems powering up. She adjusted the strap on her flight bag and stepped in like she was crossing a threshold in her own mind. One wrong step, and she could fall into something she'd never climb out of. Leo sat toward the back, at a walnut-inlaid table, jacket removed, sleeves rolled, fingers tapping across a glass tablet. He didn't look up. She cleared her throat. I thought executive managers didn't start until wheels up. His gaze lifted slowly, cool, assessing, and quiet as ever. You came. I haven't accepted yet, she said. I'm just not the kind of girl who ghosts at the gate. Leo's mouth twitched, almost amused. Noted. She dropped into the seat across from him, but not without noticing the sleekness of the wood grain, the precise chill of the cabin air. The way the seat felt like it adjusted subtly beneath her posture. Even the luxury here conformed soft, obedient, curated. She wouldn't be any of those things. You didn't mention this was a 12-hour flight to Dubai. I wanted to give you time to consider, he said, setting the tablet down. Uninterrupted. Or trapped. Same principle. Harper crossed her legs. So what exactly does an executive flight manager do on a jet that practically runs itself? You'll manage all in-flight logistics, security protocols, crew coordination, manifests, service protocols, but mostly his eyes held hers. Level, you'll be managing me. She arched an eyebrow. Is that a job or a hazard? Depends on your tolerance for turbulence. Depends on yours for control. A beat of silence followed, the kind that flirts with electricity. It hung between them, sharp and bare. Leo stood. I'll give you a tour. She followed, eyes sweeping over each detail of the plane not as an employee, but as someone reading between the lines. There was no standard opulence here. It was curated minimalism, masculine, sleek, but never vulgar. No gold, no excess. Just silence, dominance, precision. Like him. This was custom built, he said, gesturing toward a lounge area with a low-slung velvet couch and hidden compartments. Twin suites. Hidden surveillance. panic switch behind the liquor cabinet. Everything coded to biometric scans. You always plan for war in the sky? He stopped walking. Always plan for betrayal in luxury. Something in his voice went darker, then flickering like a light bulb about to die. Harper's throat tightened. You think I'll betray you? Leo turned. I don't know what you'll do. That's why I hired you. That's not trust. No, he said quietly. It's interest. She swallowed. There were worse things than being underestimated. Being interesting to Leo Dumas might be far more dangerous. He opened a sliding panel to reveal a compact but lavish crew area, with a private sleeping pod and built-in desk. Yours. If you stay. She ran her fingers along the edge of the doorway. It was lined with polished steel. Even here, where the crew slept, nothing was dull. Nothing was ordinary. Her chest clenched. This wasn't just a job. This was immersion. There would be no clocking out. No escape if things turned personal or worse, intimate. I need time to think, she said softly. You have 12 hours and no Wi-Fi. She exhaled a laugh, dry and involuntary. Of course. Mid-flight, Harper stood at the galley counter, watching the espresso drip into a porcelain cup so delicate it looked like it belonged in a Paris auction. She had never seen coffee so meticulously handled in the air. No pods. No button presses. No shortcuts. Leo didn't cut corners. He removed them entirely. Cream? He asked behind her. She startled, only slightly. Milk, she said. No sugar. He handed her a linen napkin without being asked. Small gesture. Disarming. Intimate. You didn't sleep, he said. She sipped. You were watching me? I was observing. You tossed. Rolled. Said your brother's name. Her eyes snapped to him. That's a violation. It was concern, he said simply. She looked away. You don't get to play the savior card. You're the one who tried to buy me off, remember? He didn't flinch. You were a threat. I'm not in the habit of underestimating those. And now? Now I'm giving you altitude. Her jaw clenched. What does that even mean? Leo leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. It means no one in my world rises without being watched. You said no to me. That made you valuable. And dangerous. There it was again. Not désir. Not kindness. Recognition. He didn't want to tame her. He wanted to study her, dissect her. Which meant she still had power. And if she had power, she had a chance to win. Whatever this was, somewhere over the Atlantic, Harper found herself staring out at the sky, watching the horizon blur into cobalt and gold. It reminded her of the first time she flew commercial, at 18, after getting her record sealed and her dreams reinstated. Back then, she had nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of refusal. Refusal to be forgotten. Refusal to stay grounded. Leo Dumas was giving her an altitude she'd earned the hard way, but was it hers? Or was it another way to owe him? A door opened behind her. Footsteps. Then his voice, low and close. You still haven't answered. I'm here, aren't I? That's not a yes. Harper turned to face him. It's not a no either. The descent into Dubai was seamless, of course it was. The Dumas jet handled cross-continental landings like a ballet dancer. Poised. Silent. Effortless. But Harper's nerves didn't match the elegance of the touchdown. She stood at the forward galley, tablet in hand, as the engines cooled and the ground crew approached in crisp black uniforms. For all her years flying commercial, she had never landed like this. No announcements, no service carts, no small talk. Just luxury wrapped in silence. Behind her, Leo spoke into a secure line in French. The language curled off his tongue like it belonged in the air. Terminal 7, private wing. Tell Faisal not to delay the papers. Harper tapped through a schedule she hadn't been briefed on until an hour ago. A logistics handoff at Al Maktoum Airport. A fleet review. A security audit. Then a gala. A gala. Am I required to attend this event? She asked without turning. Leo hung up. Required? No. She looked over her shoulder. But preferred, he added, watching her carefully. It's the Aviation Sovereign Fund Summit, high profile. I want my executive manager visible. You mean decorative? I mean unflinching. She blinked, unsure whether to be offended or intrigued. A second voice entered the cabin, smoother and lower than Leo's, like whiskey just beginning to warm. And here I thought we were keeping her off the radar. Julian Crane. He emerged from the cockpit hallway like he'd just stepped off a fashion editorial dark navy suit, crisp lines, a smile full of teeth and implication. He was handsome in the way that suggested mirrors apologized when he left. Harper froze, just for a beat. She recognized him now. He'd been on the original flight, the one where she overheard the deal. The second voice. The co-conspirator. Julian Crane, he said, offering a hand. I'd say it's a pleasure, but I don't lie before dinner. Charming, she said, shaking it. His grip was colder than expected. He smirked. So you're the one Leo traded half his legal team for. Fascinating. Julian, Leo warned, we have a schedule. I'm just making conversation. He turned back to Harper. If you need help adjusting to the altitude, I'm very well acquainted with turbulence. She offered a tight smile. I tend to fly steady when I'm not surrounded by snakes. Julian blinked, then laughed rich and sharp. Leo didn't. Later that afternoon, Harper found herself in a private hangar the size of a football field, walking behind Leo as he moved through a sea of jet engineers, customs agents, and foreign officials like a general surveying his army. Her heels echoed against the concrete, the dry Dubai heat bleeding through even the air-conditioned space. She carried a slim black folder with security clearance forms and fleet upgrade assessments. She hadn't been officially trained, but Leo seemed determined to throw her into the fire or watch how she burned. Do you normally hand off million-dollar manifests to new hires? She asked, handing over a signed copy to a French liaison. I hand them to people I want to test, Leo said. Still sounds like a gamble. Only if I think I can lose. Harper handed another document to a logistics coordinator. Why me? He turned, pausing to study her face like it might shift if he blinked. Because you're not afraid of leverage. Or loss. And that matters to you? Leo stepped closer, his voice lowering. It's the only thing that does. Before she could respond, Julian reappeared like a shadow with too much charm. We have a problem, he said casually. What kind of problem? Leo asked. Julian handed him a tablet. Flight 827 out of Lisbon flagged on customs logs. Misfiled tail number. Looks like someone's running a side charter under your registry. Leo's eyes flickered. Cold. Calculating. Julian looked at Harper. Still think you're just here for coffee service. Leo nodded to her. Come. You should see how turbulence really works. They returned to the jet 2 hours later. Harper's legs ached, her shoes pinched, and the makeup she'd applied out of politeness had melted into something unrecognizable. She slipped into the crew area, closed the sliding panel, and let out a breath so tightly held it shook. She wasn't just managing Leo's jet. She was managing him. His moods, his silences, the volatile vacuum of power he carried around like static. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just looked and people bent. Except her. Not yet, at least. Herr Table pinged. A new message. From Julian Crane. Subject. A little light reading. Don't worry. I keep secrets too. Especially the ones sealed by court order. J. C. Heffingers went numb. She hadn't told anyone, not even Leo, about her juvenile record. She'd buried it under legal protections, changed states, built her career from the wreckage. Julian knew, and that meant he'd already started using it. That night, Harper stood outside the gala hall in a backless black gown she hadn't known she owned. It had been delivered to her suite with a note in Leo's handwriting, "Presence is power. You already have both." She wasn't sure if it was meant to calm or command her. Inside, violin music floated like perfume. She caught her reflection in the glass wall, poised, elegant, unreadable. The kind of woman who could survive altitude. Leo appeared beside her, perfectly tailored in midnight black. His cufflinks catching the chandelier light, like tiny weapons. You clean up dangerously well, he murmured. Is that a compliment or a warning? He offered his arm. Depends on how well you can dance. As she took it, Julian watched them from across the room, glass in hand. Smile unreadable. Altitude, Harper thought. It wasn't just about being above ground anymore. It was about surviving everything beneath it. Chapter 3. The sky isn't neutral. Harper Lane had never known a sky could feel like a trap. Not until now. The next morning, the Dumas jet sliced through pale blue over the Adriatic Sea, its cabin as immaculate as ever. But to Harper, it felt too different. It wasn't just the altitude. It was the silence. The way the walls seemed to breathe. The way Leo's gaze lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. It was day 3 on the job. And already she could feel the altitude pressing on her chest like an unspoken condition. She reviewed manifests, confirmed security clearances, and filed fuel intake receipts, while pretending she didn't see Julian Crane watching her every move. From the back of the cabin, he sipped black coffee like it was a ritual sacrifice. "You're thorough," he said, voice a casual knife. Harper didn't look up. "I'm paid to be." "You weren't always this meticulous, were you?" Her spine stiffened, but her expression didn't waver. "Excuse me?" Julian stood, circling the lounge area like a man pacing a chessboard. "I like to understand the people I work with." "You're a sealed file, Harper. Like a vault, someone forgot to guard. It intrigues me." "You mean you like to exploit people?" "I like to protect what Leo builds. That includes identifying liabilities." She turned to face him fully. "If I were a liability, I wouldn't be here." Julian smiled, slow and wolfish. "You're here because Leo trusts your potential, not your history. Maybe he trusts both." His eyes sharpened. "He doesn't know both." The silence that followed was more dangerous than shouting. It wasn't fear. Harper felt it was fury laced with control. A burn she'd spent years teaching herself how to contain. Julian didn't scare her, but he knew how to wound without leaving a bruise. Leo found her mid-afternoon in the lower crew corridor, scanning telemetry data. She didn't hear him approach, but she sensed his presence moved like a shift in cabin pressure. "You haven't eaten." Harper didn't look up. "Neither have you." He nodded, a faint flicker of approval in his eyes. "I thought Julian would have scared you off by now." His predictably. That made Leo pause. "Is he?" He hides his contempt behind flattery. "It's not clever. It's just polished." Leo stepped closer, the hum of the jet surrounding them like a second skin. "I didn't hire you to play office politics," he said. "I didn't accept the job to be anyone's pawn." Their eyes met. It was the first time he looked tired. Not physically, but something beneath the skin. A weariness that had nothing to do with sleep. "He wants something from you," Leo said quietly. Harper studied his face. "Do you know what?" Leo didn't answer right away. "Julian's smart, but he's losing patience. That makes him dangerous." She almost asked, "Why keep him close then?" but stopped herself. The answer would only raise more questions. About loyalty. About betrayal. About the people Leo Dumas chose to trust with knives. That night, they landed in Florence for an unscheduled overnight layover mechanical inspection, according to the dispatch log. But Harper suspected something else. Leo disappeared into a black car flanked by Italian security. Julian followed in another. Harper stayed behind. The airport staff offered her a private suite in the terminal's luxury lounge. She refused. Instead, she sat in the quiet of the empty jet, reviewing maintenance records and sipping lukewarm tea from a porcelain cup she hadn't earned the right to touch. Once upon a time, the silence was nearly perfect, until her tablet buzzed. Encrypted file received. Sender unknown. Herr Pulse skipped. She opened it. A PDF. Dozens of scanned documents. Old arrest records. A redacted juvenile case file. Her name. Her brother's. A court docket from the Bronx. 2009. He has it. Julian had sent a message loud and clear. He hadn't just found her past. He was holding it hostage. By the time Leo returned just past midnight, Harper was sitting in the cabin lounge, shoulders square, the tablet glowing in her hands. He paused when he saw her. "I thought you'd be asleep." I thought you'd be honest about who I'm really working with." Leo frowned. "What happened?" She held up the tablet. "I told you I had a sealed record. You never asked about it. Now Julian's using it like a blackjack behind my back." His jaw tightened. "Did he threaten you?" "Not in words. But I know what a move looks like when it's just a step before checkmate." Leo walked to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of scotch, and handed her a glass. She didn't take it. "You didn't answer." His voice was low. "Julian isn't stupid enough to threaten someone in my trust." Harper's laugh was sharp. "You think this is about your trust?" He froze. "I'm not here for your reputation," she said. "I'm here because you offered me something I couldn't buy for myself. Altitude. But if that comes with strings tied to my throat, I'll walk." "I didn't know," he said quietly. For the first time, Harper believed him. The way his hand curled around the glass, the flicker in his eyes more than irritation, more than damage control. It was something he hadn't let her see before. Fear. Not of Julian. Of what she thought of him. "I'll handle it," he said at last. "You'd better," she whispered. And this time, when their eyes locked in the hush of midnight light, it wasn't about power or leverage. It was about reckoning, and the fragile beginnings of trust. The next morning, Florence woke in pastel. Terracotta roofs caught the golden light, like old secrets being warmed back to life. Harper stood at the edge of the hotel balcony in one of Leo's unused executive suites, crisp, neutral, impersonal, watching the city blur below. She hadn't slept. Not really. Even in the stillness of Egyptian cotton and triple-glazed windows, she could feel it, the weight of being watched. Julian had gone silent after the encrypted message. That silence was worse than a threat. It meant he was waiting, and Harper had no idea for what. Leo knocked once and stepped inside without ceremony. He wore a slate-gray suit, no tie, a fresh scar of tension above his brow that hadn't been there the night before. In his hand, he held a small flash drive. "I had Julian's email server mirrored this morning." Harper's brows lifted. That was fast. He shrugged, as if invading his own VP's privacy was just Tuesday. "You'll want to see this," he said, handing her the drive. She plugged it into her tablet and opened the only file, a time-stamped message log from Julian's encrypted server. Hundreds of pings, including routed messages to Cayman accounts, legal counsel, and a burner address that seemed to mask itself across IPs, but it was one message near the top that froze her. Subject: Lane. "She's clean on the outside. But I have the originals. When the time comes, she'll fold or flee. Dumas always picks broken things. I just know how to break them faster." Harper read it twice, then once more. Each word was a knife, honed and efficient. She looked up. "How long have you known he's been planning something?" Leo's jaw flexed. "A while, but I didn't know who he'd target next." "Why not fire him?" "I've built everything alongside Julian," he said. "We started the company in a Weehawken garage, with nothing but stolen airspace and arrogance. Firing him now without cause would fracture everything we've built. He's got claws in the board. Into the press. And I had no proof until this." He nodded toward the drive. Harper handed it back. "You do now." Leo pocketed it, then paused. "You could walk away from this. I'd protect you. Buy out your contract, move you somewhere. No one could ever touch you again. That's not what I want." "What do you want, Harper?" She turned to the window, voice low and tight. Not to be the girl someone thinks they can break faster. Back on the jet, Harper spent the flight cross-referencing Julian's encrypted server data with internal aircraft logs. She noticed something strange. Flight 827, the same jet Leo had flagged days ago, had been logged for internal maintenance twice in 1 week. But the timestamps didn't match the location history. 2 different airports. One manifest had been altered post-flight. She leaned closer, narrowing her eyes. Why would Julian scrub a manifest unless he was hiding cargo or a passenger? Her tablet buzzed. An incoming call. She tapped the screen. "Jackson?" she whispered. His voice came through with the same scruffy warmth as always. "You okay?" "No. But I think I'm close to something." "You still have friends in FAA systems?" Jackson hesitated. What are you pulling me into? I need a passenger manifest cross-check. Flight 827. I'll send you the timestamp. Look for anything redacted. Or, modifile. I'll see what I can do. But Harper, if this is federal level. I know, she said. That's why I called you. She hung up before she could second-guess it. Hours later, Leo stepped into the rear lounge and found her curled in the corner, still in uniform, hair pinned back, shoes off, eyes half closed but mind running. You're still working, he said quietly. I don't know how to turn it off. He sat across from her, watching her carefully. I used to envy people like you. Like me? People who survive things. People who rebuild without expecting applause. Harper met his gaze, surprised by the softness in his voice. You don't think you've survived anything? Leo looked away, as if the truth were hovering just out of frame. I survived power. That's not the same thing. She leaned forward slightly, her voice like silk folded over steel. Why me, Leo? Why did you really offer me that job? He didn't answer right away. Then, because I needed someone who wasn't afraid of seeing me as I am. And how's that working out for you? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Terrifying. And necessary. A silence followed. But this one was different. It didn't feel like a void. It felt like breathing space. The kind of pause you only get when two people stop hiding from themselves. Later that night, her tablet pinged with a message from Jackson. Found something. Not good. Call, ASAP. She stepped into the galley, heart pounding. He picked up on the first ring. Harper. There was a third manifest. Her throat tightened. A third? Yeah. Flight 827 was registered with a shadow manifest, a fake itinerary linked to a shell company in Monaco. Someone was moving high-profile assets. There's no names, just initials. L. D. J. C. And one other I don't recognize. L. D. Leo? Could be. Or someone using his name. But it's tied to a private jet, linked to diplomatic shipments. That means either tax fraud or something worse. She stared into the mirror on the wall. Her own reflection looked like a stranger. Are you saying Leo's involved? I'm saying someone wants you to think he is. And in that moment, Harper realized something else. If Leo was innocent, Julian wasn't just trying to sabotage the company. He was trying to sabotage the truth. Chapter 4. Layover in Shadows. The rain in Dubai came without warning, sharp, silver streaks that blurred the view from the executive terminal like watercolor bleeding too fast across paper. Harper stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass, watching the tarmac disappear behind the downpour. Planes idled like sleeping beasts under wet light. She hadn't told Leo yet. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the tablet, knuckles pale. The fake manifest. The shell company in Monaco. The initials. It all pointed toward something that wasn't just internal sabotage, it was an illusion crafted to look like Leo's signature. As if someone had designed a crime to fit his silhouette. It was too deliberate. Too clean. Too intentional. Behind her, the cabin door hissed open. She didn't turn. She knew his footsteps now, smooth, heavy, without apology. Leo moved like a man who never had to chase anything. You've been quiet, he said. She kept her eyes on the storm. I've been thinking. Dangerous habit, he murmured. I found something, she said, voice flat. Flight 827 had 3 manifests. Silence. I thought you should know before I decide what to do with it. Now he was behind her close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence against her spine. Still, he didn't touch her. Say what you came to say, Harper. She turned slowly, holding the tablet between them like a fragile accusation. This one has your initials. A shadow registry. Diplomatic cargo privileges through a holding company that doesn't exist anymore. Leo didn't blink. You think I fabricated cargo routes under my own name? I think someone wants it to look like you did. He took the tablet from her hands, brows narrowing. His eyes flicked across the screen, controlled, calculating, but something in his jaw changed. A slow tension. A recognition. I've seen that file format before, he said quietly. Julian used it when we routed non-standard contracts for Crown sovereign accounts. Is that legal? Leo looked up. It's legal. It's not clean. Harper exhaled, stepping back slightly. He's building something behind your back, Leo. This isn't just about me or a power grab. He's trying to implicate you. Or blackmail me. Which means you need to choose. Leo set the tablet down. Choose what? Whether you keep playing defense, or finally go on the offensive. That silenced him. For a moment, Harper thought he'd retreat, pull back into that icy shell he used like armor. But instead, he did something unexpected. He sat down, not like a man surrendering, but like a man remembering what it felt like to carry too much weight. When I started Dumas Aviation, he said, it wasn't about jets. It was about control. I was raised in chaos. A father who gambled everything. A mother who walked away without saying goodbye. I built this company so no one could ever abandon me again. Harper's chest tightened. I don't trust people, he continued. Not because I don't want to, but because they always turn the cockpit into a crash site. And Julian? I thought he was the exception. He leaned forward, hands clasped loosely between his knees. Every file, every flight, every billion-dollar deal, he was there. And I never once thought to question whether he needed me to trust him, or whether he was just waiting for me to stop looking. Harper knicked beside him. Not close, but close enough. We're not the same, she said quietly. But I understand what it means to build something to outrun what you came from. He looked at her, raw and unmasked. What did you build? Myself, she said simply, out of nothing anyone thought could fly. A beat passed, then another, and in that small stillness between confession and acceptance, something shifted. He reached for her hand, not with dominance, not with seduction, but with a question her fingers answered when they didn't pull away. They flew to Geneva the next morning. No press, no security detail, just the two of them and a skeleton crew. Leo said it was a business trip to investigate a client. Julian had recently signed off on. Harper knew it was something else. This was his first move. I'm locking Julian out of all accounts that touch corporate registries, he told her in flight. He'll notice within hours. That's when he'll start making mistakes. And when he does, I want you watching. She nodded. He didn't ask if she could handle it. He already knew. At the Geneva terminal, Harper slipped away into the private lounge to upload her findings into a secure Dumas system. As she worked, a notification pinged on the console. New email, encrypted message from J. C. She froze. Her thumb hovered, then tapped. Subject, tether. You can sit next to the throne, Harper. Or you can burn with it. Your choice. Either way, he falls. Julian. The words didn't just carry threat. They carried certainty. Julian wasn't gambling. He knew something. Something Harper and Leo hadn't uncovered yet. She copied the message, encrypted it again, and sent it straight to Leo's private server. Then she closed the console and looked at her own reflection in the glass. There were no crowns in sight. Only storm clouds forming. The Geneva air was colder than expected, biting and alpine, a sharp contrast to the molten heat Julian Crane carried with him like a serpent wears its skin. Harper didn't plan to meet him. She certainly didn't plan to confront him alone. But when the elevator doors opened in the Dumas Aviation satellite office, and there he stood leaning against the glass conference table like he already owned the outcome, Harper didn't flinch. Executive manager, Julian drawled. Voice dipped in mockery. Or should I say, Leo's new emotional support liability. She stepped inside the room without hesitation. I have a better title. The woman who's already 3 moves ahead of you. Julian smirked, slow and amused. Careful. Hubris looks good in a silk gown, but it wrinkles fast under pressure. Harper folded her arms. You think threatening me makes you powerful? No, he said, stepping closer. I think knowing you makes me powerful. Her stomach turned, but she didn't show it. You're underestimating how many sealed court records I've reviewed, Harper. You think Leo's affection will survive the truth? That the man who built his empire on loyalty won't hesitate to discard you when he learns you once helped your brother falsify evidence in a weapons charge? Harper's mouth was dry, but her voice was steady. He knows about my record. Julian raised an eyebrow. But does he know why? She hesitated, and that was all it took. He grinned, teeth bared like a knife unsheathed. Ah, there it is. You're bluffing, she said, pulse ticking in her neck. No, he replied, circling her like a vulture. I'm being generous. Right now, I'm offering you survival. Sit still. Keep Leo occupied. And when the board reshuffles, I'll make sure you land somewhere soft. You want me to spy on him. I want you to remember what happens when someone like Leo Dumas gets betrayed. He leaned closer, voice a low whisper. He doesn't forgive. He annihilates. Harper stared at him. Then maybe you should be scared too. He paused, blinking once. That was her opening, and she took it. Leo trusts me, she said, voice sharp. And you just made your first mistake. What mistake is that? You assumed I came into this playing defense. She stepped around him, heels clicking like punctuation, and left him standing alone, watching the controls slip from his fingers like sand. By the time she returned to the hotel, Harper's hands were trembling not from fear, but from adrenaline. She locked the door behind her, pulled off her coat, and paced the length of the suite twice before finally calling Leo. He answered on the first ring. Did you get his message? She asked. I did. I spoke to him. Silence. Then, alone? He cornered me in the Geneva office. Are you all right? She sat on the edge of the bed, exhaling. He tried to get me to turn on you. Offered protection when the board flips. I knew he'd try to buy you. He didn't offer money, she said. He offered survival. A pause stretched between them. Then Leo's voice came, low and deliberate. What did you say? I told him he made a mistake. Another silence. But this one was different, warmer, sharpened by something intimate. He did, Leo said. She ran a hand through her hair, voice softening. He knows about my past. Not just the sealed version, the real reason. Leo didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. Tell me. She hesitated. But then, she did. My brother was in trouble. He was 17. We were living out of our car in Queens. One night he panicked, picked up a weapon someone else had dropped during a fight, and ran. Cops cornered us. He told me to lie. I did. She swallowed. I falsified a statement. I thought I was saving him. The court didn't agree. Leo didn't say a word. Until she added, I was a kid trying to protect someone I loved. And I paid for it. Twice. I'm not the justice system, Harper, Leo said finally. I'm not interested in punishment. She blinked. You're not angry? I've been lied to by men in suits my entire life. You didn't lie to me. You survived. That makes you more qualified than half my board. Something in her chest cracked open. Not kite trust, but something close. Julian's panicking, she said. Good. He's going to make a move soon. He already has, Leo murmured. He booked a trip back to New York on a separate charter. I think he's heading to the board early. To flip them? Or feed them? Harper stood, moving to the window. The rain had stopped. The mountains glistened in gold. What do you want me to do? She asked. Leo's voice dropped. Don't let him out of your sight. Later that night, Harper waited in the Geneva Terminal's private VIP lounge under the guise of reviewing departure manifests. Julian passed through security with a diplomatic badge and no luggage. She followed at a distance, close enough to hear him on the phone. She's cracking. Dumas still thinks she's clean, he said in a low tone. Push the press file. I want her past public by Friday. Let's see how much altitude she can survive when her name hits the news. Harper's blood went cold. He wasn't just trying to destabilize Leo. He was going to destroy her first. Back in her suite, Harper opened the encrypted portal Jackson had set up for her on a burner drive. She uploaded everything: Julian's voice log, the message from the tarmac, the ghost flight records, and pressed send to Leo. She stared at the blinking screen, then typed one line in the encrypted chat. He's trying to turn the sky into a weapon. So, I'm learning how to shoot back. Chapter 5. Paris in Gray Silk. Paris was dressed in gray silk and rainlight when they landed. From the window of the Dumas jet, Harper watched the city unfurl beneath low clouds, rooftops glistening like slate mirrors, the Seine winding its way through stone and shadow like a secret someone whispered centuries ago. This was not a business trip. Not really. Officially, Leo had cited a quiet meeting with European partners. Unofficially, it was a retreat. A pause. A calculated breath before the storm Julian was stirring broke wide open. Harper followed Leo into the car waiting on the tarmac. Black, unmarked, discreet, as everything in his world seemed to be, the interior smelled like vetiver and warm leather. The silence between them was soft, like the space before a kiss that hadn't yet been considered. She turned to him only once, eyes catching his profile against the window. In Paris, Leo didn't look like a man building empires. He looked like someone trying to outrun ghosts. Their suite overlooked the Pont Alexandre III. It was too luxurious to be casual, too intimate to be professional. Harper stood at the edge of the room, running her fingers along the heavy velvet curtains. Outside, dusk pressed in like a confession. Inside, the air felt almost hesitant. Leo set his bag down without ceremony. "There's a meeting tomorrow morning. Small. Quiet. I want you there." She nodded, then added, "This city feels too soft for the things we're carrying." He glanced at her. Softness doesn't mean weakness. She stepped closer, tilting her head. "Is that something you believe, or something you've learned to say?" Leo didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the golden lamps just beginning to blink alive across the bridge. "I used to think softness was a liability," he said. "But lately, I've started wondering if it's the only thing that makes power worth having." Harper studied his back, how he stood, like he wasn't entirely in the room. He always had one foot somewhere else, somewhere more calculated, more armored. "Tell me something real," she said. He turned, surprised. "Something no one else knows." He watched her, gaze unreadable. Then, slowly, he unbuttoned the cuff of his left sleeve and rolled it back. A thin scar ran across the inside of his wrist, faded but distinct. "I crashed a motorcycle when I was 22, he said. "Took a corner too fast in Tuscany. I was trying to impress someone. I ended up in a ditch." She stepped closer. "Who were you trying to impress?" "My mother," he said simply. "She never came to the hospital." Harper's throat caught. "She told me later that fear was weakness. And weakness was earned by the unworthy." Harper reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist, then resting gently over the scar. It wasn't a grand gesture. Just contact. Just presence. "You're not unworthy," she said. Leo didn't move. "You've never been—" They stood like that for a beat longer, two people pretending they hadn't just admitted something deeper than strategy, something more dangerous than attraction. Then Leo said, almost too quietly, "It's your turn." She hesitated, then spoke. "I still sleep with the lights on. Not always. Just when I feel like I'm not real. Like I could disappear if the room goes dark enough." Leo looked at her, really looked. And for once, he didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer safety or solutions. He just stayed. That was new. That was worse, and better. Later that evening, Harper wandered alone into the Musée d'Orsay. Leo had stayed behind, taking a secure call that lasted longer than she had patience for. So she slipped out of the suite without a word, needing space that didn't speak back. The museum was nearly empty at dusk. Just soft footsteps, distant echoes, and paintings staring down at her like they knew something she didn't. She stood in front of a piece by Whistler, Muted Colors, a woman alone by a curtain, her back to the viewer. There was something unbearably familiar about it. Like longing turned into stillness. She whispered aloud, not meaning to, "I don't want to be a painting someone walks past." Behind her, a voice answered, "You couldn't be, even if you tried." She turned. "Leo." He stepped up beside her, hands clasped loosely in front of him. His presence didn't crowd her. It wrapped around her like a coat you forgot you needed until the wind caught you wrong. "You followed me." "I guessed," he said. You're the kind of woman who finds silence more trustworthy than men." She didn't deny it. "I used to come here," he said, "before the company, when I was broke and pretending to be a consultant. I'd sit in front of Degas and figure out who I needed to become." "And who did you become?" His answer was soft. "Someone harder than necessary." Harper turned to him, heart thudding. They were inches apart now. She could smell the faint hint of his cologne, cedar and citrus, and something like memory. "I think," she said, "there's still softness in you." He looked at her like that was the most dangerous thing she'd ever said. Then, slowly, so slowly, he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think," he whispered, "you're the only person who could survive it." Their breath mingled in the stillness between them. And for the first time, Harper didn't move away. They didn't kiss inside the museum. Not beneath the hush of oil and brushstrokes. Not beneath the judgment of time-worn statues or the high arches of curated silence. No, Harper walked away before their nearness could tip into something irreversible. She didn't want to be art in a frame he admired and left behind. She wanted gravity. Outside, the Parisian air was cool and damp. Street lamps cast a golden haze over slick cobblestones, and somewhere, a violin sang faintly through an open metro grate. She walked ahead of him, silent, letting the city hold her thoughts. Leo followed without speaking. They passed cafes just closing, tables wiped down, laughter trailing into alleyways. Everything smelled like wet stone and rain-washed wine. Finally, she paused at the edge of the Pont Royal. Below, the Seine moved slowly, like breath, like the part of a confession you never say out loud. "I'm not ready for this," she said. Leo stopped beside her. "This? You. Us. Whatever this is. I haven't asked you to be." She turned. "Then why are you here?" He looked down at the river. His hands were in his coat pockets again, his armor. His pause was long. "Because I don't want to do this alone anymore," he said. That cracked something in her chest. Not a clean break. Just a fracture, quiet and intimate. She stepped closer, close enough to smell the storm on his coat, the trace of cologne, the faintest hint of brandy from earlier. "I'm still trying to figure out if you want me beside you," she whispered, "or beneath you." His gaze snapped to hers. Not with offense, but with honesty. "I want you where you stand," he said. "Exactly there." Their breath mingled in the cold. Then, without a word, he lifted a hand and let it rest at her jaw, fingertips, gentle, reverent. She didn't stop him. Their kiss was slow, not hesitant but careful, like a secret pressed into skin. Like something neither of them had ever quite done before, not like this. Not when it mattered. Not when the stakes were skybound. Her hands found his coat, clutching it like an anchor. His mouth moved over hers like a promise made in the dark. They kissed like they were making something that hadn't existed until now. Not lust. Not levrage. Recognition. And when they pulled apart, it wasn't with distance. It was with silence. And knowing. He kept his forehead against hers for a long moment. "Tomorrow," he said, "everything changes." She nodded. "I know." And neither of them said the truth. It already had. Hours later, in the dead hush of the Paris suite, Harper lay awake in bed alone. They hadn't taken it further, not because they didn't want to, but because they did. That was more dangerous than the alternative. She rolled over, staring at the thin beam of streetlight peeking through the curtains. Her lips still tingled from the kiss. Her pulse still drummed with the pressure of it. But something else buzzed beneath the calm. A message. She sat up, reaching for her tablet. Encrypted ping. "Jackson, 1:17 a.m. Tell Leo to watch his back. Julian just landed in D.C. He's meeting with 2 names linked to Dumas investors. Something's moving. Also your sealed file? It's not sealed anymore. It's been unsealed by court order. Someone is making a play." Harper's blood ran cold. Julian had gone federal. And someone had cracked the one wall she'd thought would never fall. She stared at the screen, then rose, pulled on her coat, and padded barefoot into the suite's lounge where Leo had fallen asleep in an armchair. Glass of water untouched beside him. His phone charging on the table. He looked younger in sleep. Or maybe just real. She didn't want to wake him. But the truth wouldn't wait. She knelt beside him, touched his hand. His eyes opened instantly. He didn't startle. Just woke like a man trained never to sleep fully. "What is it?" he said, sitting up. Harper handed him the tablet. He read. His jaw tightened. Then softly, "It's starting." She nodded. "We're out of time." At sunrise, Leo stood at the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. Harper watched from the bedroom doorway, wrapped in a blanket and silence. He was speaking fast. Precise. Orders, not questions. Names, not hesitations. "Scrub the record," he said. "I don't care what judge signed off on the unseal, find the source. And put someone outside Crane's apartment. I want eyes on him until I say otherwise." He hung up. Harper stepped beside him. "I'm not ashamed of what I did," she said, "but I didn't want the world to weaponize it." Leo turned. "They won't. You can't protect everything, Leo." "I don't need to protect everything," he said. "Just you." Her breath caught. The city glowed behind him like something alive, like the backdrop to a battle about to begin. He took her hand, and for the first time, she let herself believe that maybe she wasn't alone in the sky. Not anymore. Chapter 6. The Betrayal Ledger. The news broke just before dawn. Harper's name, face, and juvenile arrest record splashed across digital headlines like spilled ink. Every outlet had it. Former teen felon working. Beside billionaire aviation. CEO. Tabloids ran side-by-side photos of her boarding Leo's jet, smiling politely, unaware her past was being unearthed beneath her feet. The record was real. But the framing wasn't. They made her a headline. A scandal. A question of Leo's judgment. As if her past nullified her presence. As if a girl who had once lied to protect her brother couldn't now tell the truth to save an empire. The damage wasn't in the facts. It was in the angle. And Leo hadn't called. Not once. Harper sat curled in a hotel chair, knees drawn up, blanket wrapped tight around her like armor. The Paris sun broke in sideways through the windows, turning her skin to gold and shame in equal measure. She stared at the screen. She didn't cry. She was too practiced for that. 2 hours later, Leo entered the suite with the sound of gunfire in his stride. He didn't greet her. Didn't apologize. He just tossed a phone onto the table, its screen flashing with dozens of missed calls from legal and PR teams. "Who did you tell?" he asked. Harper blinked. "What?" "About your record. Before me." "Who knew?" Her blood chilled. "Jackson," she said slowly. "A friend from before. He helped me find the third manifest." "He wouldn't." "How well do you know him?" "Well enough to know he didn't sell me to the press." Leo exhaled sharply. "Harper, this is a nightmare. I've got reporters camped outside boardrooms. My own legal team didn't know we had someone with a sealed felony riding in diplomatic aircrafts." "You offered me that seat," she snapped, standing. "You knew who I was. I knew part of it. So now you think I'm a liability." "I think," he said, voice cool and cracking. "I don't know what else you haven't told me." That stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. She looked at him. Really looked. His jaw was tight. Shoulders coiled. The Leo she'd kissed on the bridge was gone. In his place was a CEO in damage control mode. All walls. No breath. "I didn't leak the record," she said. "I want to believe you. But you don't." His silence was louder than a verdict. By noon, the suite was stripped of warmth. Staff came and went. Phones rang. Lawyers argued in 3 languages. Harper sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for Leo to look at her the way he had in Paris, soft, curious, vulnerable. But he didn't. He looked at her like she was a breach in the hull. Outside, cameras waited. Inside, Julian Crane thrived. Leo hadn't said it aloud, but Harper could feel it in the way he moved. Julian had twisted the story, flipped the script, turned Harper's past into a weapon of doubt. And now that seed had been planted, it was growing inside Leo, poisoned by shame and optics and empire preservation. Harper could survive shame, but not invisibility. That evening, Leo finally sat beside her on the couch. He didn't touch her, just rested his elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I need to put distance between us," he said. Her breath caught. "You already have." He didn't look at her. "The board's watching. Every appearance, every report. If they think I'm compromised—" "They already think that," she interrupted. "This isn't about them. It's about you." He turned slowly, eyes unreadable. "What does that mean?" "You don't trust me." "You did. And now you're retreating because it's easier than fighting for something uncertain." "Uncertainty doesn't build companies, Harper." "No," she said, voice cracking. "But it builds people." The silence that followed was devastating in its finality. Leo stood, adjusted his cuffs. "I'll have your ticket booked by morning. Separate flight. No press." And then he left. Just like that. Without slamming the door. Without saying goodbye. Without looking back. That was the worst part. He didn't leave like a man breaking something. He left like a man protecting something. And Harper couldn't tell whether it was himself or her. She waited until the suite was empty. Then opened her tablet and stared at the manifest again. The third flight. The altered cargo registry. The initials. The paper trail no one had questioned until her. And then, something flickered in the metadata. A timestamp edit. One Julian had made 10 days ago, the day before her record was unsealed. Her eyes widened. He knew before the court order, which meant he'd anticipated the leak, which meant he orchestrated the whole thing. Harper didn't cry. She opened a clean document and began to write, because if she was going down, she wasn't going quietly. By midnight, Harper had mapped everything. The third manifest. The Cayman Trail. The altered timestamps. The unsealed juvenile file, timed just hours before the board's quarterly meeting. Julian's personal war disguised as internal turbulence. She compiled it all into a single file. Not flashy. Not emotional. Just precise. A data storm with nowhere left to hide. And she sent it, not to Leo, to his board, to legal, to the internal ethics review team. She knew what it meant. It would cost her everything, but she would not sit quietly and be turned into someone else's convenient lie. Leo hadn't slept. He sat in his office in the Dumas Aviation Tower overlooking Manhattan's frozen skyline, watching the sunrise break through glass like spilled molten gold. But it didn't warm him. He'd sent Harper away 2 days ago. Not with cruelty, but with fear. The kind of fear that lived at the root of every empire. What if I choose wrong? What if I trust the wrong one? And now the whispers were growing. Investors wanted explanations. Board members questioned his judgment. And Julian, ever efficient, had already taken 3 key meetings in Leo's absence. He sipped scotch from a water glass. Noiche. No sleep. And then his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, you need to see this." A secure file had hit the internal server, flagged from an anonymous source. But Leo knew the writing, the structure, the ruthless elegance of someone who'd learned to build order out of chaos. It was Harper. He opened it, and for a moment, the only sound was the soft, relentless pulse of his own regret. Julian's server log. The audio recording from Geneva. The altered court documents. The financial ghost trail. The pattern was so clean it made Leo's chest tighten. She hadn't betrayed him. She'd saved him. And he'd sent her away like she was the leak. The traitor. The threat. He stood. And for the first time in weeks, Leo Dumas didn't feel powerful. He felt late. Julian Crane arrived at the Manhattan Tower exactly 30 minutes later, cool and unhurried. He entered the executive floor, like a man already rewriting the ending. "You called an emergency meeting?" he asked, loosening his coat, flashing a smile. Leo was waiting by the conference window, hands folded, eyes unreadable. The boardroom was empty. No investors. No lawyers. Just them. "You played this well," Leo said. Julian raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry. You used my trust. My silence. You used her. Leo, Julian said gently, you're tired. You're reacting to pressure. The press had a right to know. The press had nothing, Leo snapped, until you gave it to them. You planted the leak. You altered internal records. And you tried to dismantle me from the inside. Julian blinked, then smirked. I see she got to you first. She didn't come to me, Leo said. She went to the board. The people you thought you controlled. Julian's mouth tightened. Leo stepped forward, voice low and razor-edged. You thought I'd hesitate to cut you out because of history. But the only thing our history proves, Julian, is how long you've been waiting to hold the knife. He dropped a folder on the table. Inside. Evidence. Signatures. Wire trails. Disciplinary violations. Effective immediately, Leo said. You're done. Julian opened his mouth to speak, but Leo raised a hand. I won't destroy you, Julian. You'll do that yourself. Meanwhile, Harper stood in a quiet Brooklyn cafe, far from towers and tarmacs, watching the world move on without her. She had no job, no security clearance, no future in aviation. But she had her name. And that was enough. Until the door opened, and Leo walked in. Not with bodyguards, not in a suit. Just him. Wool coat, raw eyes, and the faintest trace of humility she'd never seen on his face before. She stood. How did you find me? You told Jackson this was your reset spot, he said. The place you come when you have to choose who you are again. She crossed her arms. So which Harper am I to you now? The liability? The lesson? He walked closer and pulled a folded letter from his coat. She took it. It was from the board. After review of submitted materials, the Ethics Committee commends Harper Lane for her integrity, discretion, and refusal to remain silent in the face of internal corruption. Leo's voice cracked. I should have believed you. I didn't because I thought, if I trusted you and was wrong, I'd lose the company. He looked at her, but I was wrong anyway. Harper's breath caught. I trusted the wrong person, and I let the right one walk away. A beat, then another, and Harper whispered, Do you know what betrayal feels like, Leo? Yes. So do I. He nodded, then said, Then let's stop surviving it alone. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. She squeezed it. Once. Firm. Real. They stood in the hum of the cafe, two people who had finally learned that the difference between betrayal and belief isn't certainty, it's choice. Chapter 7. Below the Turbulence. The first thing Harper noticed when she re-entered the Dumas Aviation Tower wasn't the silence. It was the pause. A second too long between greetings. A receptionist who avoided eye contact. A man in a cobalt suit who whispered something as she passed. She wasn't just back. She was watched. She kept her chin up anyway. Let them stare. Let them wonder what it felt like to be the woman who dismantled Julian Crane with nothing more than evidence and nerve. Let them wonder what it meant that Leo Dumas walked into every meeting with her now. Not behind him, not after, but beside. She still didn't wear the uniform, but she had presence. And that, in this building, was more powerful than a nameplate on glass. The elevator opened into the executive floor with its usual hush. Leo stood waiting outside the glass conference room, arms folded, coat still damp from morning rain. He looked at her and didn't speak, not with words. Anyway. His eyes said, Ready? Hers said, Always. Inside the room, the board was mid-discussion, legal papers splayed across the table like a war map. Leo entered first. Harper followed. The air changed. Let's begin, Leo said, voice sharp and clear. This is Harper Lane. She's here to walk you through the sequence of Julian Crane's misappropriated manifests and falsified registries. The tension snapped into something thinner, almost brittle. A board member in his 60s, with a Princeton pin and a steel smile, leaned forward. With all due respect, Mr. Dumas, this company is still processing the PR fallout from Miss Lane's past. Her credibility. Harper cut in, calm and sharp. My credibility isn't in question, she said. Julian's intent is. Leo didn't stop her. He let her lead. She connected her tablet to the screen and began the walkthrough. Every falsified timestamp, every ghost registry, the email trail that led back to Julian's offshore accounts, and the legal push to have her juvenile record unsealed an act that, while technically legal, was highly unethical and coordinated alongside his shadow financial movements. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Harper looked up, chin lifted. I wasn't the liability. I was the warning sign no one wanted to see. Leo added, and from now on, she's not just a flight manager. She's my new chief integrity officer. A pause. Then someone clapped. Not sarcastically. Just once. Then twice. And the boardroom shifted again this time, in her favor. They didn't speak until they were in Leo's private office, the glass doors sealed behind them. Harper exhaled slowly, pacing near the window. I'm not a suit, Leo. He nodded. You're better. She turned, arms crossed. They won't stop questioning me. I'm the girl from the sealed record who walked back in and rewrote the rules. Good, Leo said. Rewrite them. A beat. She looked at him, then really looked. How did you handle it? She asked. All those years. Buying doubted. Watched. He sat at the edge of his desk, face quiet. I didn't handle it. I just kept winning. And when you lost, I made it look like it was part of the plan. That made her smile just barely. You're arrogant. Only in public. A pause. Then Leo added, more softly. But I've never been proud of anything the way I was watching you in that room. Her heart stirred at the edges. Not with heat, but with weight. Real, solid, grounded. Don't say things like that unless you mean them, she whispered. I do. Don't say things like that unless you're ready for what they come with. I am. And something between them settled not a resolution, but a readiness, the space where trust starts to rebuild itself. Brick by careful brick. That night, Harper returned to her apartment in Harlem. She didn't go back to the jet. Not yet. Instead, she made tea, sat by the window, and let herself breathe in the ordinary. No boardroom. No scandal. No altitude. Just streetlights. Concrete. A corner bodega she'd missed. She didn't want to lose this part of herself, the one that knew what ramen tasted like when you had $3 to your name, the one who could recognize the sound of her building's pipes just before the radiator kicked in. She'd built her flight path from here, and she wouldn't forget that. Her phone buzzed. Leo, 9:41 p.m. I have something for you. You free tomorrow morning? She stared at the message for a beat, then typed back, Depends. Am I meeting the CEO or the man who kissed me by the Seine? The typing bubbles flickered. Then, both. She smiled. And this time, it wasn't careful. It was earned. Leo didn't take her to the office. He didn't summon her to a jet, a hotel, or a boardroom. He brought her to a brownstone in the West Village. It was old, pre-war, red brick, ivy down the side. Not what Harper expected from a man who lived his life in glass towers and leather lounges. But as soon as he opened the iron gate and guided her through the door, she understood this wasn't his office. This was his past. The walls were lined with art, not curated, not expensive, just personal. Black and white photos of New York before it became real estate. Sketches that looked hand-drawn. A chipped globe near the fireplace. I bought this place before I made my first million, Leo said, watching her as she took it all in. Back when I still took commercial flights and washed my own car. Let me guess, Harper said. You kept it to remind yourself where you started? No. He smiled faintly. I kept it because it's the only place where I don't have to be anyone. She nodded, fingers running along the edge of a bookshelf. So why bring me here? Because I want you to see who I am outside the altitude. That stopped her. And maybe that was the most honest thing he'd ever said. He gestured toward the table near the window. A folder rested there, along with 2 mugs of coffee, real ceramic. No logos, no chrome. Harper sat. What is this? Leo slid the folder toward her. The beginning. She opened it. Inside were 2 documents. A formal restructuring plan for Dumas Aviation's leadership and a legal partnership clause. naming her as co-lead on internal oversight operations. Her name, in print, not just as an assistant or a whisper in the background, but as a stakeholder, a partner. Harper blinked. "Leo, I'm rebuilding from the inside out," he said. "And I need someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Someone who doesn't flinch when the press turns." She closed the folder gently. "You know, this won't just provoke Julian," she said. "It'll provoke everyone who thought I was just a story to bury." "Good," he said. "Let them watch. But you'll have to defend it. Publicly. Personally." Leo reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Then let me be clear," he said. "This isn't about atonement. Or guilt. This is about trust. I trust you with everything I've built and everything I haven't figured out yet." Her breath caught. There were no grand declarations. No poetry. Just truth, delivered quietly, deliberately. And that was more terrifying than love. Because it lasted. Later, they walked the West Village streets in silence, coffee in hand, Harper's scarf trailing in the wind. The sky was low and winter soft, clouds pressing in like a held breath. Leo kept close, not possessive, but protective. Like he wasn't guarding her, but the space between them. "You always carry the storm around with you," Harper said, eyes forward. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I learned early that storms get ahead of you if you don't carry them first." She looked up. "And what happens when you finally put it down?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never tried." Harper stopped walking. He turned to her, and in that moment, she saw it. Not the CEO. Not the pilot of empires. Just a man learning how to land. Meanwhile, across town, Julian Crane wasn't watching sunsets. He was watching timelines. From a penthouse suite paid for through an off-ledger Cayman account, he scrolled through the latest headlines, half smirking as the public began warming to Harper again. She'd survived the scandal, spun it into strength, which meant his final card had to be played now. He picked up the burner phone and dialed. "Activate the audit leak," he said. "Everything from 827. The third manifest, the tail number discrepancies. The overseas tax files, dump it anonymously and frame it as a whistleblower tip." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Julian, Leo's already cleared her." Julian's voice hardened. He hasn't cleared himself. He ended the call. In his mind, there was still one narrative left to ruin. And this time, he wasn't aiming at Harper. He was aiming at Leo. That night, Harper sat in Leo's brownstone kitchen, barefoot and half lost in the rhythm of domestic quiet. He poured them each a drink whiskey, neat, and sat beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He nodded. "If all of this disappeared, your planes, your title, the empire, who would you be?" He didn't hesitate. "The man who made you coffee in a chipped mug." Her chest pulled tight. "That's either the most manipulative thing you've ever said, or the truest," he said gently. They sat in the hush for a beat longer. Then he kissed her softly, slowly, like something earned, not claimed. And when they pulled apart, neither of them smiled. Because it wasn't done yet. But it had begun. Together. Chapter 8. Flight Risk. The headline dropped at 9:17 a.m. Dumas Aviation CEO implicated in off-book international charter fraud. Subhead: Whistleblower points to secret flights, sealed financial trails, and executive collusion. Harper read it twice. Then a third time. The wording was surgical. Subtle. Enough to avoid slander, but devastating in implication. It wasn't just an attack. It was a strategy. A final slash from a man who didn't know how to lose quietly. She was on her second cup of black coffee, barefoot in Leo's kitchen, when the first call came in. It was Leo's assistant. "They've triggered an emergency inquiry. Internal audits escalating. The press wants a comment." "And Harper, someone leaked your name again. Not as the accused. This time, as the source." Her mug slipped, smashing to the floor. Leo arrived 20 minutes later, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked sculpted from ice. His coat was wet. His eyes unreadable. He didn't speak until the security system locked behind him. Julian framed you. Harper was already pulling up the audit files on her tablet. He made it look like I turned state witness. The whistleblower complaint is real, but it's forged. Leo nodded. The date stamp's wrong. It says it was submitted a week ago. You were with me. That won't matter, she said. Not once this hits legal. A pause. Then she asked the question that had been burning at the edges of her voice. Is any of it true? He looked up. I need to know what I'm defending. Leo didn't answer right away. He stepped toward the window, watching the rain trace lines down the glass like the past returning in slow motion. There were flights, he said finally. A long time ago, before the company was global, before we were clean. Harper's breath caught. I didn't know everything Julian was doing, but I knew enough. I let it slide. I told myself it was temporary, that once we hit market share, I'd clean it all. He turned to her. And then we did hit it. But the dirt was still on my hands. Silence spread between them like fog. You lied, she said. He omitted. Same result. Her voice didn't break. But her shoulders did. You could have told me. When this started, when we kissed, when you looked at me like I was something good. Leo's voice was low, thick. I didn't know how. No, she said. You didn't want to. She stepped away, hugging her arms across her chest like she could hold the fracture inside. I built trust with you from scratch, Leo. I let you see me when I was still bleeding. And all this time, you were just hoping I wouldn't look too closely. He didn't move. Didn't beg. Didn't chase. But his silence was louder than any plea. I need to fix this, she whispered. Then let me help. No, she cut in. This one I do alone. And she left. Without looking back, because if she did, she wasn't sure she'd be able to walk away at all. By noon, Harper was in a private meeting with Dumas Aviation's Ethics Council. I want full access to all internal audit materials, she told them. Every version of the whistleblower file, every timestamp, every routing trail. And I want access to the legal correspondence that came with it. The woman across the table, gray-eyed, composed, tilted her head. You're not on the legal team anymore. I'm not here as legal. Then who are you? Harper Metterhaze. I'm the only person willing to call Julian's bluff. Over the next 6 hours, she built the case, piece by piece. Julian's forged submission had been sent through a proxy server traced to a private IP in Lisbon, where Julian had briefly rerouted a jet 6 weeks ago. The email address used the same encryption pattern he'd used to unseal her court record. He was consistent, if nothing else. But it wasn't until she cracked the metadata that everything clicked. The whistleblower document had been compiled using a custom document template, one with a hidden author tag embedded deep in the source file, created by J. Crane. She stared at the screen, heart thudding. The man had buried his own name in the lie. Cocky. Sloppy. Desperate. She saved the file, encrypted it, and sent it to Leo with one line. This ends tonight. Across town, Julian Crane poured himself a scotch in a private club lounge. The news cycle was moving just as he'd planned. His name hadn't come up once. Harper was being questioned. Leo was distracted. Until his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Single attachment. Document. Author. Tag trace. Fraudulent. Submission. Then a second message. We're meeting. Now. Come alone. Location. Teterboro. Runway 3. 6:30 p.m. He stared at it, then downed the drink in one gulp, and left, still convinced he could spin his way out of anything. At 6:30 p.m. The tarmac at Teterboro was slick with recent rain, the runway shining like a silver blade beneath the floodlights. Julian stepped out of the Blacktown car, coat snapping in the wind. Harper stood at the base of the Dumas jet stairs. Alone. Waiting. She didn't look afraid. She looked ready. Dramatique, Julian called. Even for you. I thought you liked drama, she said, holding up the folder. This has your name all over it. Literally. He stopped walking. You don't have the guts to take this public, he said. You still think you're protecting him, but you're not. I'm not doing this for him, she said. I'm doing it for me. She stepped closer, folder still in hand. I don't need altitude anymore, Julian. I own my story now. She dropped the folder at his feet and walked away, never once looking back. By morning, the folder Harper had dropped at Julian's feet was already making the rounds. It didn't explode into the press. It detonated internally through legal, through the board, through every corridor of power Julian once used as his personal runway. The evidence was irrefutable. Not just circumstantial, but fingerprinted. Julian's name wasn't just attached to the whistleblower forgery. It authored it. By 10 a.m. His keycards were deactivated. By noon, 2 federal investigators met him in a glass conference room on the 47th floor. By 2:12 p.m., he was escorted out of Dumas Aviation. No press, no spectacle, just the quiet hum of justice finally touching down. Harper stood at the edge of Leo's office, tablet in hand, watching him through the glass wall. He was alone, seated at the long table, a man in stillness, surrounded by the empire he'd built and nearly lost. He hadn't spoken to her since she sent the final report. He hadn't even looked at her, but he'd read every page. And now she waited not for gratitude, not for permission, just to see if he would finally meet her there, in the space beyond power. He turned slowly, sensing her. The moment stretched. Then he rose and opened the door. Inside, the air was quiet. He didn't go behind his desk. He stood in front of it, sleeves rolled, cufflinks left forgotten on the table like artifacts from another life. I owe you more than I can say, he said quietly. You don't owe me anything, Harper replied. You owe yourself the truth. Leo nodded, then added, You didn't just expose Julian. You protected the company. No, she said. I protected you, whether you deserved it or not. He stepped closer. And now? She paused. Her voice was soft but steady. I don't need you to fix me. Or elevateme. I just need you to see me. Without conditions. Without altitude. He met her eyes. And this time, there was no hesitation. I do. A beat. Then another. And Harper took one slow step forward, closing the distance they had spent, weeks, months, pretending didn't exist. You were wrong about one thing, she said. What's that? She placed a hand against his chest. That you're not capable of softness. Leo inhaled, sharply. Like the truth of it hurt more than any accusation ever could. Softness was always the most dangerous part of me, he said, because it's the only thing I never learned how to control. Harper's fingers slid down, brushing the front seam of his shirt deliberate, but not possessive. You don't have to control it, she said. You just have to choose it. Their eyes locked. And in that moment, Harper Lane wasn't just the woman who'd dismantled a conspiracy. She was the woman who had taught Leo Dumas how to land. Later that night, after the board had cleared Harper of all suspicion, and Julian's lawyer had begun quietly negotiating terms, Leo drove her out of the city. No security. No jet. Just them. The car coasted along the Hudson, windows down, wind threading through silence like ribbon. He didn't tell her where they were going. She didn't ask. When they pulled up to a private airstrip north of Manhattan, Harper raised an eyebrow. Leo just smiled faintly. It's not what you think. She followed him across the tarmac to a small hangar. Inside, a restored Beechcraft Bonanza. Vintage. Immaculate. First plane I ever flew, he said. Before luxury. Before Gulfstreams. Before deals. He handed her a headset. Come with me. She hesitated. You're flying? He grinned. Do you trust me? I trust you'll be unpredictable. Close enough. In the air, everything was simpler. No headlines. No strategy. Just wind. And stars. Harper sat beside him, headset on, watching the blur of city lights fall away beneath them. Her hand rested lightly on her thigh, brushing his. What happens now? She asked. Leo didn't glance over. He just said, we stop trying to outrun who we were. And we decide what kind of altitude we want to fly at together. She smiled, but it wasn't playful. It was real. Earned. You sound like a man who's learning to share the cockpit. I'm considering co-pilot status, he said, glancing over. But I warn you, I'm still very bad at turbulence. Good thing I'm not. The plane dipped slightly, banking over the river. They flew on into the night. Two people no longer hiding, no longer performing, no longer falling, but flying. Together. Chapter 9. The Altitude of Forgiveness. The jet was quiet again. Not because of scandal or silence, but because for the first time there was no war to fight, no headlines to dodge, no lies to shield themselves from, just air, and distance, and possibility. Harper stood at the edge of the cabin window, watching clouds rise like breath against the glass. Below them, the world unfolded in slow motion. Rivers stitched through valleys. Cities blinked in and out of view. It should have felt triumphant. But it felt unwritten. Leo approached quietly from behind, his presence soft now, no longer commanding, but considerate. "You're not wearing your headset," he said. "I wanted to hear the quiet," she replied. He stepped beside her, not quite touching. "I thought altitude would feel different after everything." "And does it?" Leo exhaled. "It feels lonelier. Unless you're here." Harper didn't flinch at the softness anymore. It didn't scare her the way it once had. What scared her now was how easy it would be to lean into it, to forget that forgiveness wasn't a ribbon you tie over pain. It was work. "You said once that you built Dumas so no one could leave you," she said quietly. He nodded. "But you left yourself," she added. "Every time you chose power over truth, that landed." He didn't deny it. Didn't deflect. "I know," he said. "And I don't want to be that man anymore." Harper looked over at him. "You don't get to say that unless you know what kind of man you do want to be." Leo reached into his coat and pulled out a single folded page. She recognized it immediately. The original blueprint of the Beechcraft Bonanza. His first plane, signed, dated, and labeled with trembling hands 20 years younger. "I kept this because it reminded me who I was before all the noise," he said. "Before leverage. Before luxury. I think I want to go back to that." She unfolded it, tracing the delicate pen strokes with her thumb. "You don't need to go back," she said. "You just need to begin." They landed in Napa later that afternoon. Not for business. Not for press. Just them. Leo had purchased a vineyard estate 2 years ago, but never stepped foot in it, too busy, too focused, too addicted to altitude. But now, the fields rolled like waves beneath the soft California sun, golden and green and impossibly quiet. It was the kind of place you could disappear into, or build something from. "This was supposed to be my retirement plan," he said, unlocking the main door. "But I never learned how to stop long enough to want it." Harper stepped inside. Warm wood floors. Open beams. A kitchen that begged for coffee at sunrise and quiet confessions at night. She turned to him. "Why bring me here?" "Because I want you in this next chapter. Not as decoration. Not as an escape. As a partner." She didn't respond right away. Just took a slow step forward and laid her hand against his chest. "You hurt me," she said. "I know. You doubted me. I'll never forgive myself for that," he said. "But I'll spend the rest of my life proving I won't do it again." Her voice broke, soft and clear. "I need more than love, Leo." "You'll have everything," he said. "Love. Honesty. Equal footing. Even the last cup of coffee." That made her smile. Not wide, but real. That night, they didn't make love like a cinematic climax. They undressed slowly. Laughing once, when he bumped his knee. They kissed softly, awkwardly, sweetly, like people learning a new language together. There was no performance. No heat designed to erase pain. Just skin. And closeness. And the quiet echo of two people choosing to begin again. Afterward, wrapped in linen and silence, Leo brushed her shoulder with his thumb. "I still don't know how to be soft," he whispered. Harper turned toward him, her voice barely audible. "Then let me teach you." And outside, under the Napa moon, the world held still, not in triumph, but in peace. The vineyard's morning mist rolled across the hills like a silk sheet drawn over bruised skin. Inside the estate, the smell of fresh espresso and burnt toast drifted through the kitchen. Harper stood barefoot in one of Leo's shirts, sleeves pushed up as she tried and failed to reheat croissants. Leo watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, smile lazy and quiet. He hadn't looked this unguarded in years. Maybe ever. "You're terrible at this," he said. "Genius takes time," Harper muttered, turning over a half-scorched pastry. He stepped behind her and kissed the back of her neck, laughter warm against her skin. "How is it that you can decode encrypted air traffic logs but can't manage a toaster oven? I prefer to battle enemies I can see." Leo turned her gently. "You always see what matters." The moment could have lasted forever. But his phone rang, a tone he hadn't heard in days. "Board line." He didn't answer right away. Harper nodded once. "Take it." He stepped outside to the patio, the vines stretching in orderly rows beneath an awakening sun. "Leo Dumas," he said into the phone. "Leo," came the clipped voice of Meredith Vaughn, board chair. "We've reviewed the fallout, the audit, and your latest report. The damage is containable." "Good," he said. "But there's a condition." Of course there was. "You'll return, as CEO. Publicly. Julian's ouster has strengthened your credibility." Leo didn't respond. "There's already a redemption narrative forming," she continued. "You're the man who rebuilt from within. But the board requires an immediate press conference and a distancing from Harper Lane. You'll acknowledge her bravery, but privately you'll sever her involvement in internal operations." Silence. "Leo," Meredith said, "this is optics. You understand?" "I do," he said softly. "I understand exactly." He ended the call. And for the first time in his career, he didn't flinch. He walked back into the kitchen. Harper was rinsing her hands, face unreadable. "You heard," he said. She nodded. "They're offering it all back." He leaned against the counter. "With a price?" Her eyes found his. Steady. Clear. "I won't be angry if you say yes." "I would be." "To me?" "To myself." He took her hands in his. "All my life, I thought power was the reward. That climbing higher meant I'd never fall again. But the truth is, altitude just makes the ground further away." "And now?" she whispered. "Now I want roots." By that afternoon, Leo had drafted his response. Not through PR, not through lawyers. He wrote it himself. It was short, decisive. "To the Board of Directors of Dumas Aviation, I am grateful for your vote of confidence, but I respectfully decline reinstatement as CEO. The company deserves leadership driven by truth, not image. I will assist in the transition and offer counsel where needed, but effective immediately. I am stepping down. My altitude now lies elsewhere. Leo Dumas." He sent it, then powered off the phone. He didn't wait for their response, because this time, he didn't need it. That evening, Harper found him in the vineyard, sleeves rolled, digging his hands into the earth beside a young olive tree. "Starting over?" she asked. He looked up, dust on his cheek, grin soft. "I thought I'd try something that grows roots instead of wings." She crouched beside him, plucking a loose clump of soil from the grass. "What will you do now?" He looked at her. "At the fields. At the open sky overhead. I'll build something worth keeping," he said. "Not because it impresses the world, but because it holds something true." She leaned against his shoulder. Quiet. Settled. "I think," Harper said, "this might be the first time I've ever felt safe on the ground." That night, they shared a bottle of wine beneath a sky full of stars. No more storms. No more secrets. No more altitude to chase. Just two people who had fallen through every layer of trust and still landed in the same place. Together. Chapter 10. Final Approach. The jet sat gleaming on the tarmac at Napa County Airport, its fuselage catching the early morning sun like a blade catching light. Harper paused at the foot of the stairs, not because she was afraid, but because, for the first time, this wasn't a departure, it was a beginning. Leo appeared beside her, flight bag slung casually over one shoulder. He was in jeans and a white button-down, sleeves rolled, hair wind-tousled. There was no armor left. No mask of command. Just a man. Just him. "You ready?" he asked. Harper looked up at the aircraft. The same Dumas jet that had once been a symbol of power, precision, and unspoken debts. Now, it looked different. Still slick. Still expensive. But somehow, inviting. "What if we never land again?" she asked. Leo smiled. "Then we build a life at altitude." She smirked, stepped forward, and climbed the stairs. Inside, everything was the same. Ivory leather, polished walnut, the soft scent of vetiver clinging to the air like memory. But the energy had changed. There was no tension hiding beneath champagne glasses. No secret stitched into velvet. Only possibility. Leo closed the cabin door, locked it, and walked toward her. "I have a question." Harper arched an eyebrow. "Already dangerous." "I've been thinking," he said, "about this plane. About what it represents. It used to be my shield, my distraction, my throne. And now?" He reached into the side panel and pulled out a slim black box. Her breath caught. He opened it. Inside, not a ring, but a key card, gold-plated, engraved with two initials, H. L. Leo's voice was quiet. "Co-ownership. Full operational rights. Your name on the registry. Yours, if you want it." Harper stared at it, blinking. "You want me to fly with you?" she said slowly, literally and legally. He nodded. "Not behind me. Not as staff. As equal airspace." Her fingers brushed the edge of the card, then took it. The weight surprised her, but it also felt right. "You know this is a partnership offer disguised as a proposal," she teased. "I don't disguise things anymore," he said, "though there's a ring when you're ready." Her pulse kicked, but she smiled. Soft, steady, real. "Then let's fly." They lifted off just after 7 a.m. The golden glow of early light casting long shadows on the valley floor. Leo let Harper handle the climb. She adjusted the throttle, fingers steady on the control yoke. The horizon broke open in front of them like a promise. Blue. Endless. Untethered. Leo sat beside her, watching, not directing, trusting. That, more than any declaration, was the language they spoke now. "Where are we headed?" she asked. He glanced over. "Home." She narrowed her eyes. "And where's that exactly?" He smiled. "Wherever we decide to land." An hour later, cruising over the Sierra Nevada, Harper pulled out a folder from the side compartment. "Next venture," she said. "I want to build something." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Tell me." "A non-profit wing of Dumas," she said. "New name. New mission. Charter services for medical relief, education support, and climate research. Fully independent. No stockholders. Just impact." Leo blinked. "You've been planning this." "For weeks," she said. "Since before we cleared Julian, I needed to know what I was fighting for." He leaned back, hands behind his head. "You're dangerous when you have a cause." She grinned. "You're in?" He looked at her like she had just asked him to breathe. "I'm already flying." They descended toward the Pacific a little before noon, the water stretching like blue silk stitched with sunlight. "Do you realize what we've done?" Harper asked. Leo glanced over. "What's that?" "We built an empire, tore it down, and started something better. All without ever landing in one place for too long." Leo reached across the cockpit and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "We found something better than altitude," he said. Harper smiled, eyes glinting. "We found each other. And for once, there was no turbulence left. Just clear skies. And a new course." The wheels touched down with a whisper. No fanfare. No landing music. Just the soft thud of rubber-kissing runway and the subtle sigh of engines beginning to rest. Leo glanced sideways from the captain's seat. "Smooth." Harper smirked. "I'm getting better." He powered down the thrust levers and unbuckled. "You were always good. You just didn't let yourself believe it." She leaned back, watching the tarmac roll past the windows. Still learning how to believe the altitude is mine. It is, he said. Always was. They taxied to a private hangar in Santa Barbara. The airfield was quiet, no reporters, no staff, no press. Just open sky and sunlight caught in the sea air. Harper unstrapped and stood slowly, stretching as she walked toward the rear lounge. It wasn't about luxury anymore. It was about freedom and peace. Leo followed her, carrying a sleek black envelope in his hand. She raised an eyebrow. Another proposal? No, he said, stepping closer. Just proof. He handed her the envelope. She opened it. Inside, the official charter for their new non-profit aviation trust. Her name. His name. Equal partnership. Equal power. She ran a thumb over the gold lettering. We're really doing this? Leo nodded. No investors. No shareholders. No manipulation. Just good work. Done right. She smiled slowly. I almost don't recognize this version of you. I barely recognize him myself, he said, but I think I like him. Harper set the folder down and reached for his hand. Where's our new home? She asked. Leo led her to the exit stairs, then paused at the top. Beyond the tarmac was a stretch of hills, sunlit and slow, with a winding road leading toward a villa tucked into a bluff overlooking the ocean. White stone, olive trees, terracotta tiles warmed by the coastal sun. I bought it a week after Paris, he said. You were planning this? I was hoping for it. Harper turned to him, breath-catching. Leo, it's beautiful. It's ours. The car right up the hill was quiet. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything had already been chosen. Leo drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on Harper's knee. Her fingers traced lazy lines over his wrist, grounding him, reminding them both that the altitude was no longer something to fear. It was something they could rise together. At the top of the hill, the villa greeted them like a memory not yet made. Inside, the rooms were sun-drenched and warm. No marble. No boardroom furniture. Just hand-woven rugs, soft bookshelves, and windows that opened wide to the sea. Harper wandered into the kitchen. On the counter sat 2 crystal flutes and a bottle of champagne. A note beside it, in Leo's handwriting. For the next chapter, let's stay in the air, even on the ground. L. She turned around. He was already there. No suit. No defenses. Just him. Just Leo. He held out the bottle. Do the honors? She took it, popped the cork with a practiced flick, and poured 2 glasses. They toasted. No words. No promises. Just clinking glass and soft smiles. Then Harper leaned into him, rested her head on his shoulder, and whispered, You're not afraid of the landing anymore, are you? He pressed a kiss to her temple. No, he said, because you're there when we land. That night, they watched the sun set over the Pacific from the villa's balcony. A plane passed high above them, its silver belly catching the last of the light. Harper traced it with her eyes. I used to think the sky was where people went to escape, she said. Leo pulled her closer. And now? Now I think it's just another place to return from. He nodded. With the right person beside you. They sat in silence as the light dipped into darkness, their glasses empty, their hands still linked. No more altitude. No more performance. Just a love that had earned its way through turbulence. Together, they had fallen. Together, they had risen. And now, finally, together, they had landed